one might look at cities today. And I titled it Politics and Aesthetics of Green. And in a way, green is something that we've been talking all day about, all of yesterday and a little bit today, and not to mention the word eco. So it's all about green and all about eco. So I'll offer that up as a way to talk about a city, or if you like, telling stories about a city. And I would then end with three quick research topics that is not unlike green. It's three more ways of looking at a city. So I would basically be reading from the text. Hopefully the translator would also keep up. I heard it's not easy. So it is now hardly contentious to say that in the last century was impacted by garden city thinking. Since Ebenezer Howard published his visionary essay, Tomorrow, A Peaceful Path to Real Reform, back in 1898, the founding of Letchworth, the first garden city in 1903, if you like, the world has witnessed a proliferation of products and even byproducts of the garden city. Besides Britain, continental Europe, countries such as France, Germany, Italy, Russia, saw a proliferation of garden city suburbs between the 1900s and the 1930s. These were not limited to picturesque plans and vernacular architecture and construction. Le Corbusier's plan for a new residential quarter at Frugus, this was back in 1924 and 26, and the Wiesenhof housing estate in Stuttgart, 1927, planned by Mies van der Rohe with some colleagues, with a number of individual houses designed by Peter Behrens, Walter Gropius, and so on. Interwar urban reconstruction projects such as Ernst May's New Frankfurt was also part of many proposals put forward by European thinkers during the war years. And not to mention Siam's satellite cities proposal. And there are different countries engaged in such a dialogue about cities. In the United States, the New Deal program of the 1930s accelerated the expansion of suburbs and saw to the building of large-scale housing projects as well. And these were mostly privately assisted housing schemes, such as the Stuyvesant Town in the city of New York, that continued well after the war into the 1970s. Not to mention Patrick Abercrombie's Greater London Plan of 1944 and the Park System Plan, also known as the Open Space System. Or for that matter, Allison and Peter Smithson's elevated streets in the sky housing proposals of 1950s, and Le Corbusier's Unité de Habitation at Marseille, built in 1952. These had huge impact on the rest of the cities to come. So in a sense, these projects are directly or indirectly attributing the sort of the principles, the founding principles to Howard, Ebenezer Howard's garden city theory, or if you like, garden city plan. So why do governments and private developers, even up to the present, find that the garden city idea is, why is it so attractive, so marketable, and so easily acceptable by the general public? And to what extent are the housing estates with their technological and stylistic trappings of the modern movement, to what extent are they impacting us today? How can a contemporary critical architecture practice and new forms of housing avoid this rhetoric that has long been successful, but still begs a deeper question. Why is the latest catchphrase garden city lifestyle? Why is it so easily digestible? Let me take this chance to go through a series of cases, if you like, case studies that might illuminate how this politics and the sort of the aesthetics of green and what it might look like. So effective was this transplantation of the garden city idea in post-colonial Hong Kong and Singapore that it warrants a deeper look. So Hong Kong and Singapore could not imagine that the city could have taken any other form than the one that had emerged. But the present did not just happen. It was constructed. And Ram Kuhas perhaps was one who is a little bit less polite in pointing out certain shortcomings, and while of course staying incredibly and quietly excited by the possibilities. So whether by design or by accident, intended or not, the garden city in its various forms and iterations wasn't inevitable. It was propagated and exploited by a combination of sponsors, social reformers, industrialists, philanthropists, politicians, literati, and not least architects and planners. So to consider these questions, I'd like to share 4 cases. The first being a privately owned garden city estate that was designed in Hong Kong in the 1930s. And the second is a high-rise housing block in Singapore called the Forfar building. Third is a new town concept that promoted national identity. And lastly, newer trends in the contemporary era. So the garden city estate in 1930s, contrary to its socialist beginnings back in Britain, the garden city in Hong Kong was in fact